Hi, my name is Allison Lounes from Paris Unraveled at www.parisunraveled.com. And Paris Unraveled is your guide to living and studying in France independently. And today's webinar is on the topic of moving to France, the quick start guide to moving to Paris, and what you have to do, specifically the 6 things that you have to do as soon as you arrive in Paris, aside from finding housing. So today's webinar is sponsored by a new company that I'm very excited about that I think fulfills a significant need in Paris, which is student housing. If you've ever tried to find an apartment in France as a student on a budget, especially as a foreign student on a budget, you can be very well aware that, one, apartments are very small and very expensive, and 2, that it is very difficult to find landlords who want to rent to you if you don't have someone who is co-signing your lease, who is a French citizen and has assets in France. And so this company, Allo Student Rentals, at allostudentrentals.com, that's www.allostudentRentals.com, is a company that purports to put landlords in contact with foreign students and ensure that you have a good experience finding housing once you arrive in Paris. So if you're a student, I urge you to check out their website and contact them. It's a company that's just getting started, so contact them if you're looking for housing and see if they can help you find something. So the topic of today's webinar is moving to France, and once you arrive and you have your apartment and you've done your état des lieux and signed your lease, what are the first things that you have to do? The very first thing that you have to do when you arrive in France, you can't do anything without doing this, is open a bank account. Anything that you want to do in France requires a bank account because, one, you need a bank card to do practically anything. French money laundering laws are such that it's very difficult to pay for things with a lot of cash, so you need a debit card. And 2, you need what's called a RIB, a relevé d'identité bancaire, in order to do most transactions and set up billing for things like internet, cell phone, electricity, any recurring billing that you have. So the very first thing that you have to do is open a bank account. Now, in order to do that, you're going to need a couple of things. The first thing is what's called a justificatif de domicile. And a justificatif de domicile is a document that says that you live in your apartment. It can be a copy of your lease. Some banks will not accept a copy of your lease if it is a handwritten document that is filled out like a form that you can download off the internet that any 2 people could fill out. Some banks will not accept those if they don't look legitimate and official. It can also be a copy of an electricity bill or a gas bill or a water bill. And it can be what's called an attestation d'hébergement. So if you are new in an apartment and your bank will not accept your lease because it's a handwritten, filled out form, you can ask your landlord for what's called an attestation d'hébergement. And basically this form is a copy of the landlord's ID, a French national ID card. It is also a note that the landlord will write, often just directly on the photocopy of the ID, saying, I attest that this person lives at this address that I own. So, and it's dated. And the landlord provides the copy of his ID and a copy of a recent utilities bill, such as gas, electricity, or water, or a property tax bill in his name. So those 2 documents together, combined with the note and signature from the landlord, would be an attestation d'hébergement, and that is sufficient for being a justificatif de domicile in almost every situation. If your landlord gives you one, you want to make copies, and you want to not date it. Anytime that you give a justificatif de domicile, it has to be less than 3 months old. So if it takes you a while to set up your electricity, and to get a quittance de loyer, so a receipt for rent, and or your landlord handwrites all these documents and people don't want to accept them as being official, then you want to keep this justificatif de domicile, the attestation d'hébergement, as being undated so that you can use it again and again and just write the new date each time. And you may have to ask your landlord for updated gas or electricity bills each time that you have to furnish this document to someone in an official capacity to make sure that it stays up to date and it's accepted. So your justificatif de domicile is your most important document for opening a bank account. If you're a student, then the process will be very easy, especially if you're very young. Under 26, usually you have a very easy time opening a bank account. And if you can provide proof that you have a bank account in another country and money to put into your bank account, then that should be totally fine for most banks. You'll have to provide your passport, your justificatif de domicile, and proof of being a student, and that should be it for most banks. Now, if you're working, you should also provide a copy of your work contract to show that you'll be having money deposited regularly into your bank account. If you are an employee and you are not a student, then you will need to provide a copy of your work contract and an idea of your monthly salary to your banker in order to open an account, and you might have trouble. You might have to have your employer talk to your banker and pull strings on your behalf. The reason it can be difficult to open a bank account in France is that bankers are individually criminally responsible if you commit fraud using a bank account. As I mentioned before, money laundering laws are very strict, and if you do anything illegal with your bank account, the person who opened your account for you could go to jail. So this is not something that the French government takes lightly, and it's why you might have to jump through some hoops, especially if you're not a student and you can't provide proof of regular income. You might have some trouble opening a bank account in France. But those are the main documents that you need to provide. And once you sign all the forms, your banker will order your bank card and your checkbook, which will take probably about a week to get to your bank. And they will give you a document that you will need right away called a RIB, a relevé d'identité bancaire. They are transitioning to a new European format of this document that will be standard in all European countries. So we're still waiting for all banks and companies to transition to this new document, but the principle will be the same. Is that it identifies your bank account, and you give this form to companies that you want to bill you directly and withdraw the money from your account. So things like your electricity bill, your gas bill, your monthly Metro Pass, all of these things will probably be billed directly to your bank account. And you will have to give a copy of this form to them. One thing I didn't mention before is that for your bank account, you are required to open an account in the branch that is nearest to your apartment or to your place of schooling or work. So you don't get to go into any branch of BNP Paribas and open an account wherever you want in Paris. You have to go to the one that is closest to where you live, and that will be your official branch. So if you have questions, you go to your banker who is there. If you order a checkbook or a card, that's where you'll pick it up. But most of your transactions with your bank, especially if you need to speak to a person, will go through your agency. And if you move, you need to go to the agency of that bank in your new neighborhood and tell them that you're moving and that you want to move your account from your old agency to the new one. So that's your basic overview of how to open a bank account, which is arguably one of the most important things to do aside from finding housing. The second thing that you have to do right away is very important. It's getting renter's insurance that includes something called responsabilité civile. Now, the renter's insurance is relatively straightforward. It covers all of your possessions in case of damages or break-in. If your neighbor upstairs has a washing machine that explodes and fills your apartment with soapy water and ruins all of your electronics, then it will probably be included. Now, in many cases, you'll want to ask your banker about this, and LCL, which is Paris Unraveled's official bank, has a great deal for students where basically you pay about €5 a month up front for your renter's insurance, and then you get reimbursed all but, I think, €1 for the year. So they have an excellent deal. It has to be a studio apartment that's smaller than a certain size. I want to say 20 or 25 meters. You'll have to check out the details with them. But they're a good bank to go to if you open your student checking account and get your renter's insurance with them and you're a student. They provide an excellent deal. Now, student prices for renter's insurance run between about 80 and €100 a year, unless you get this very special LCL deal, which I have not seen anywhere else. You'll have to make sure that your apartment meets the requirements. So if you're a student, that means that it has to be below a certain size. You have to be living alone. If you live with roommates, then you will have to check to see whether each roommate needs a policy or whether all roommates are covered under the same policy. These are all questions that you have to ask your banker. And you need to provide proof of this insurance to your landlord, who can invalidate your lease. It's very difficult for landlords to cancel the leases of their tenants. Tenants have a lot of rights in France, but a lease can be determined to be invalid if the tenant does not get insurance on the property. So you want to make sure you do this very quickly. Renter's insurance also includes something called responsabilité civile, which is basically what France does instead of suing people like we do in the United States when anything bad happens. So responsabilité civile will cover you if, for example, you throw a cigarette out of your window and it sets someone on fire, and it was an accident and you didn't do it on purpose, then you are not legally responsible financially for that happening, and it will be covered by the responsabilité civile, which is a type of insurance that would pay for the medical expenses for your victim, for example. So it costs about 37 to 40 euros a year. It may have gone up slightly due to inflation, but it is included in basically any policy that you provide. And it can also be purchased separately if you are moving into an apartment that already has renter's insurance with roommates and you're already covered in that way. Then you can purchase individual responsabilité civile coverage for about 40 euros from any major insurance company or bank. And you should do this because you will need to provide proof of responsabilité civile coverage for most universities when you enroll. And I've never had anybody ask for it personally, but some schools and employers will. In order to sign up for renter's insurance and responsabilité civile, you will again need a copy of your lease. You'll need details on the size of your apartment, whether it's furnished or unfurnished, what floor it's on, whether or not it has a reinforced door and shutters on the windows, and all of which should be in your lease and your état des lieux. And you will also need potentially a justificatif de domicile, again, if there's a question about whether or not your lease is handwritten and seems a little bit sketchy, then they might ask for additional documents. Once you have renter's insurance, you can get an attestation from your insurer with the date, and that can also serve as a justificatif de domicile because people do not get renter's insurance on places that they are not currently renting. Go figure. So That is another document that once you have it, it will be a good justificatif de domicile, and it will be it will be easier for you to get one of those. Normally, you can just walk into your bank or your insurance agent and ask them to print you a recent one. So it will be easier for you to get a copy of that document than it will be for you to get, say, a copy of your electricity bill, which sometimes are only issued every 6 months. You will also need to give them a RIB, which they will have if they're your bank, and if they're not your bank, then again, that's that form that allows them to withdraw money from your account every month, and you can set up to pay whether it's every month or every year of larger amount. Once you have these two items taken care of, so your bank account and your responsabilité civile, the next step is going to be, depending in your apartment, to set up your electricity and your internet. Now, both of these things, in theory, should not be that complicated to set up. In practice, EDF, Orange, and other internet companies are not the most efficient at customer service, and it can take weeks to get these accounts set up. So the first thing that you want to do is ask your landlord who lived in this apartment before, and do they have an electricity bill and an internet bill for that person. So ideally, your landlord will have a copy of the contract for the tenant before you, and that will have a client number. And this is the case for both internet and electricity, either a client number or, in the case of the internet, the phone number beginning in 01. And those numbers will be able to identify the contract that existed in your apartment before you. If you have these, awesome, because it means that your apartment will be set up very easily. It means that Orange and EDF will be able to find you, find your apartment, and know what they need to do to reactivate a new electricity or internet contract for that housing. If you don't have them, the next thing that you have to do is identify where you are in the building. So first, second, third floor, rez-de-chaussée, bâtiment A or B if there are two building entrances from your courtyard. Again, this should be listed on your lease. You should know exactly where you are, and you will have to call EDF and or Orange and say, this is my address. I live in bâtiment A, troisième étage, à gauche, or à droite, and hopefully they will be able to find you. Again, it's most helpful if you know at least the name of the tenant who was there before you, so you can ask your landlord, and that will help you to identify yourself to EDF, Orange, whatever. Now, if there has never, ever, ever been a phone line in your apartment, you're going to wait 2 months for internet. If you are only in France for a short time, I suggest in the meantime getting one of those 3G keys or 4G keys that you can use to access internet from anywhere. You can also ask very good friends if they have a contract with Free or SFR or Orange or Numéricable or any of the major internet companies, if they have a username and password that can be used to log in to hotspots. The Wi-Fi hotspots are pretty frequent around France. They can sometimes be a little bit slow. But if you don't have internet in your home, asking a friend to use their username and password to log on to a hotspot near you is a good way to get internet at home while you're waiting for them to set up your account, because it can take a long time. I don't really have any advice for that. There's nothing you can do to speed it up. They will probably have to send a technician to your house. It will be painful. But in most cases, I think in 2014, that should not be an issue. And so first, try to get the contract number. Second, if you don't have the contract number, locate yourself in your building, find out the name of the tenant before you, and in most cases, that should be enough to get you set up with EDF, GDF, Gaz de France, and any internet company that you need to create an account with. And again, once you have these accounts set up, you will need to provide them with a REIB so that they can charge you directly. Number 4, you have now set up everything in your apartment. You have opened a bank account so that you can pay for things. You have gotten renter's insurance and personal liability insurance, responsabilité civile, and you have set up your electricity, gas, and internet accounts so that you have utilities and modern conveniences like the internet. The next thing that you need to do is more of an administrative formality that every person who is not an EU citizen has to do to get a visa and once they arrive in France. It's a document called the OFI document. Now, this is a form that you will have filled out when you applied for your visa. I can provide a link to this form with the webinar in the webinar replay, but I don't have it easily accessible right now. But this is a form that you send to French immigration once you arrive saying, here I am, this is where I live. I live in France now. And you give your address and you send it off to the immigration services and they invite you back for a medical visit. And basically, once you go to the medical visit, which should happen within the first few months of your arrival in France, they will put a stamp in your visa that counts as your carte de séjour for the first year that you live in France, especially if you're a student. I'm actually not sure for salaried employees if they get an actual physical card or if France has transitioned to having all first-year residents just have the stamp in their visa, but that's not really important. So it's a form that you had to fill out as part of your visa application. The consulate stamps it. You have to keep this form with your passport, and once you arrive in France, you send this form with your new address signed and a copy of your passport and a copy of the stamp from when you arrived in France. You have to send this within 90 days of your arrival to the OFI office in your department. So in France, in Paris, it's in the 11th. The form should have on the back a list of all the addresses where you could possibly send this document, depending on where you live, so you can easily locate the address of where you want to send it. Its OFI is the Office Français de l'Immigration et de l'Intégration, so OFII, and you can download it at ofii.fr, ofi.fr. And once you send off this application, within a few weeks, hopefully, they will send you back a letter saying, yay, congratulations, welcome to France. Please come for the medical visit on this date at this time. You have to go to the medical visit when they tell you. You cannot change your appointment. You can miss it once. If you miss it one time, they will send you a new letter with a new date and time. If you miss it twice, you're out of luck. And then legally, you're supposed to leave France. So you send this document within 90 days, and you use a form that will become your very best friend. This is called un recommandé avec accusé de réception. It is a form that you use anytime you send anything official in France. If you send any documents to the government, if you cancel a contract with your insurance provider, if you want to close your bank account, if you want to cancel your internet. Anytime you send anything important, you use this form. And I cannot stress that enough. If you do not use this form, they will claim that they did not get it. They will claim that it was lost, and you will not be able to prove that they got it and that they read it. So, what is this form? This form is called recommandé avec accusé de réception. You can get them for mail sent within France, which is the yellow form, or outside of France, which is a blue and white form. You fill out in this box that's crossed out your name on the first line. On the second line, I always, always, always write the document that I am sending. So if it's reimbursement for medical costs that I'm sending to my mutuelle, I would write reimbursement mutuelle on the second line. Here you write your address, so the number and your street, your zip code, and your town. Now, over here in this blue box is where you write the address of the person you were, or the company that you were sending the documents to. And all of this in the white box you do not have to worry about. Once you do that, you turn it over on the back. You pull off the back, it becomes a sticker. You stick this barcode on the front of your envelope. And you pull out, if you can. I guess I can't because I didn't actually take off the sticker. You pull out this, which will have the person you are sending your letter to and your own address. And this is your receipt for having sent it. You have your tracking number here, so you can go on to laposte.fr and track whether or not your letter was delivered. You bring your envelope and this receipt to the person at the post office desk, and they will stamp it with the date. So if, for example, you're sending a tax form that has to be sent by May 31st and you were sending it on May 30th, you want the date showing that the document was sent on May 30th and that it will be received by May 31st. So this is your proof of postmark. Usually, for most places in France, this will be delivered within 1 day. I find that's especially true in the Paris area. Things usually only take 1 day to be delivered. And then you will receive back in the mail this document, which again will have the address of the place that you had sent it to, your own address, and the name of the document, which you identified as having been sent in this envelope. You will receive this in your mailbox back at the address that you specified, and this is your proof of delivery. So if there's ever a dispute that you didn't send your OFI document within the 90 days that you were supposed to, you bring them this form and you say, excuse me, I sent this, it proves that you have it, so if you don't have it, you lost it, and you can put me in the system again and give me my appointment for the medical visit. If you send a tax form and they say we didn't get it and they want to charge you a 10% penalty, you can say, okay, but I did send it and here's my proof that it was delivered on time. So you always want to keep these. I actually scan them into Evernote. I can't think of an example of when I would have to have the original, so I usually just keep the scan and then I could print off a photocopy if I needed to. But you can also, I mean, they don't take up a lot of space, and it's better to have them and be safe than sorry. So you will have to send your OFI documents using one of those forms to the OFI office specified as being nearest you. The accusé de réception, the yellow form that I just showed you, costs somewhere between €4.50 and €6 to send, depending on how big your envelope is. But it's very important that you use it anytime you send anything official. All right, number 5 on the list of things that you must absolutely do when you move to France. So we're starting to get a little more fun now. Is if you're in Paris, your carte Navigo. So your carte Navigo is your unlimited metro pass, and basically it allows you to use any metro or bus or tram inside of Paris for the entire month for about €67. So if you are a grown-up, I mean, if you are not a student and or you are not under 26, it will cost about €67 to get a card like this with a photo on it that you use monthly, and you can renew monthly to take public transportation. If you are a student, you'll get something called the carte imaginaire. Now, the carte imaginaire is specifically for students under 26. You have to fill out a form that you send by mail with a copy of your enrollment in school or a copy of your student ID for the current year. You can start this form on September, October, November, or December or January 1st. And for 1 year, you will pay 50% of the normal fee, so about 33 to 34 euros a month to use the metro, bus, and tram as much as you want. And that is within zones 1 and 2. So currently, Paris is divided into 5 zones. All of Paris is in zone 1. Everything that touches Paris outside of the périphérique is zone 2. So most people will have zone 1 and zone 2, which is the 34 or the 67 euros a month metro card. If you live anything outside of there, it's in zones 3 to 5, with the airports being in zone 5, farther away, about an hour from Paris. And the prices go up with each zone that you add. So if you live outside of Paris, you may expect to pay a little more. Your carte Navigo, if you're a student, again, you have to send it in the mail with either a check to pay for the whole year at once or a RIB so that they can bill you every month. And it will take 2 to 3 weeks for you to get your card back in the mail. Now, you also get a lot of great discounts with your Imaginaire card. You'll get what's called a carte bon plan for the current year, so 2014-2015, when you get your carte Navigo back. And in this case, if you want to use any of the discounts that are associated with the card, you'll have to show your carte bon plan and your Navigo card with your photo on it in order to qualify for the discounts at like McDonald's or Celio, I think, has like a 10% discount at the men's clothing store. Sephora might have a 10 or 15% discount as well. You can go on the Imagine-R website. It's imagine-r.fr in order to find out what the current discounts are. Now, if you're working and you don't take the metro every single day, then you may wonder whether or not you need to get a monthly metro pass. I personally find that it's worth it. I live 1 metro stop outside of Paris. I like to get out of the house, go in and walk around Paris as much as I can during the week. I like not having to worry about whether or not, I'm paying more in tickets than I'm paying in monthly metro passes. I don't like having to count, okay, if I go into Paris and back, that's 2 metro tickets, that's $2.60 because a carnet of 10 tickets is $13.30. I prefer not having to do that calculation. If you don't take the metro every day, if you live right near your school, or your place of work, then you might want to do a calculation to figure out whether or not you need a monthly Metro Pass. But I think it's something that everybody should have, personally. The very last thing that you have to do once you get to Paris is get a cell phone contract. Now, if you have a smartphone that is coming with you, the first thing you'll want to do before you leave for Paris is to check with your provider to make sure that your phone is unlocked and can be used in Europe. If you are on Verizon, for example, in the United States, I know that they are on a different bandwidth than AT&T, and in some cases are not compatible with European bandwidth for cell phones. So you would want to check to make sure with your cell phone provider before you leave that you will be able to use your phone in France and be able to unlock it and put a French SIM card in. So that's the first step. If you bring your phone, then you have the option of getting a plan or getting pay by the minute cards. I think that in most cases now, plans with unlimited texting and internet and cell phone minutes are so inexpensive that pretty much everybody goes with a plan. If you are only here for 1 year, do not get a plan for 2 years. Technically, legally, you are able to cancel your plan when you leave the country. In practice, your cell phone company will make it very difficult. They will not believe you. They will try to keep charging you for 2 years. They will withdraw money out of your bank account until your bank account is less than empty. And they will put you on a blacklist so that if you try to come back to France after 2 years of having been away, you will find yourself unable to set up a contract at all. This is not right, but they do it. So if you think you are only here in France for 1 year, get a contract for 1 year. And that way, you will not have any issues ending your contract when you leave. The other possibility is, of course, to purchase a phone when you're here if you don't already have a smartphone or a dumb phone that you want to use. These are the kinds of plans when you purchase a phone. It works the same, I think, pretty much everywhere in the world. You get the phone for cheaper, and then you are locked into a plan, a contract that also subsidizes the cost of your cell phone. So if you bring your own phone, you have a little bit more freedom. There are companies more and more that offer cheaper contracts with cheaper plans with no contract, so that you can cancel at any time. If you're a student, if you're only here for a semester, if you're only here for a year, if you're not sure how long you're here for, if you're an assistant and you're here for like 8 months, those would be the types of plans that you should go for, so that you don't have to stress about canceling your contract at the end, which, by the way, when you cancel it, you send using our very famous yellow form. But in most cases, you can go to the phone store or look online for comparing the different options for mobile providers. The cheapest one is free at the moment. They launched €2 cell phone plans last year, and they're doing pretty well as far as I know. But because they have no physical stores, it might take you a few days or weeks to get your SIM card in the mail, and it can be a little bit complicated to set up, or if you have troubleshooting issues. Whereas the 3 major providers are Orange, SFR, which is my personal cell phone provider, and Bouygues Telecom, all have stores within Paris. And so if you want to set up your plan, you can go into a store and do that. If you have questions, you can go into a store and ask somebody, and they're usually able to help you. So you do obviously pay a premium for them having stores and having staff available. They are slightly more expensive than some of the other new providers that are being set up and with cheaper plans, but that's up to you to compare the different plans. Now, in order to get a cell phone contract, again, the same documents, you'll need a justificatif de domicile and a copy of your passport. So the justificatif de domicile, I don't believe they require an electricity bill in most cases. They'll probably be more accepting of anything with an address on it than, for example, your electricity company would be, or immigration would require something that looks very official. Cell phone providers, not so much. So you just need any document that has your address on it. The more official looking, the better, obviously, but they tend to not be picky. And a copy of your passport, and again, a relevé d'identité bancaire. So the 6 things, to sum up, that you need to do once you arrive in Paris and find housing, potentially with the help of otherstudentrentals.com, are open a bank account, get renter's insurance and liability insurance, set up your electricity, gas, and internet contracts for your apartment, send your OFI documents to immigration using registered mail, accusé de réception, get your carte Navigo so that you have unlimited access to public transportation within Ile-de-France, and get a cell phone contract so that you can call people and use the internet and send text messages and all kinds of modern things. So those are the most important things that you have to do once you arrive. Now, Paris Unraveled, as you may know, offers services to students and expatriates who are living in France who need help setting up these documents. I speak fluent French. I am very well versed in taking care of all kinds of administrative issues for myself and for others, which can certainly be a challenge once you arrive. So that's why one of the things I've created, it's a brand new service that I'm launching this year. It's called I Moved to Paris service, and basically it's a half day in which I do all of these things for you. I meet you, we open a bank account and get your renter's insurance together. I call EDF, GDF, and your internet company on your behalf, probably pretending to be you, to set up your accounts and deal with all of those issues. We go to the post office to send your OFI documents, and I show you how to fill out this form. We go to, if you are not a student, we go to one of the metro stations where you can get your carte Navigo, and we get it for you. If you are a student, then I provide the form to get your carte imaginaire, and we send it off, again, recommandé, and we go to open an account to get a cell phone contract. Now, if you sign up before August 31st, 2014 for this brand new service, you will get it for $147, which is a great deal because it is a lot of my time. It is going to take care of a lot of problems for you before they even happen, get you all set up in France, within the first week or so of you arriving, taking care of pretty much every administrative thing that needs to happen as soon as you arrive. So if you sign up by August 31st for a half-day appointment during the month of September, you will pay the price of $147. So I will provide the information below the webinar, but you can email me at Allison, Allison, at parisunraveled.com. Tell me you watched the webinar, you want to take advantage of this special offer, and you want to schedule a half-day appointment with me during the month of September, and you want to tell me when you're arriving in France so that we can set up your appointment as soon as possible after you sign a lease, because you will need, as I mentioned, a justificatif de domicile for pretty much everything, which means that you have to already have a place to live. This is a service that Paris Unraveled no longer provides, but if you need help, you again can contact Other Student Rentals, and hopefully they'll be able to set you up. So you will find the information on how to take advantage of this offer on the page below this video. I hope to hear from you. I know that moving to a new country and a new city can be very stressful, especially if you're not sure about your French language skills, which is why it can be really helpful to have somebody who knows what they're doing, who knows what documents you need, and who is going to be able to communicate between you and the banker or the cell phone company or the electric company and smooth out all of the administrative hiccups that can happen when you first arrive and make everything go smoothly for getting you set up in France. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you about this service. And if you have any questions about moving to France, again, please feel free to email me, Allison, Allison, at parisunraveled.com. And we provide a range of consulting services for students and expatriates who are in Paris or in France in general. So feel free to contact us with any questions or any services that we may be able to provide for you. All right, thank you for watching, and please check out Paris Unraveled for all kinds of information about how to get set up and live successfully in France. Take care. Good night.